And today we are going to be learning about Unit 2, the cell. Okay, so if you would log in to Buzz, and pull up Unit 2, Lesson 1. We're going to be going over what is a cell.
Okay, crazy.
So all living things have at least one cell. And we learned this in the last unit, that a one-celled organism is unicellular, and then a multi-cell organism is multicellular. So that literally just means one cell or multiple cells. But what is the cell? So we're going to be talking a little bit about what the cell is today. The definition of a cell is that it's the basic building block or unit of life. It is an individual brick that might stand alone or be part of an entire city, for a good analogy. Now, most cells in this world are going to be too small to be seen by the eye, and you would need a microscope to view them, which microscope we learned about in the first unit was one of the tools of a life scientist. So the life scientist will use the microscope to be able to view individual cells. Now, there are some very large cells that you could see with your eye. Have you ever seen an egg? There might be one in your refrigerator right now. That is considered a single cell.
The part on the inside or the whole egg?
The whole egg.
Oh.
Is one cell. Now, you have over 200 different types of cells in your body. Not all cells will look alike. Each type of cell has its own job to perform.
So, and then after I get into Buzz, where do I go?
Lesson 1. Unit 2, Lesson 1. And then scroll down.
To the questions.
Question 1 was just answered on this first slide.
What was it?
The cell is the basic building block or unit of life. Now, here are some of the vocabulary terms. So cell, as we just discussed, the basic unit or building block of life. The cell membrane is going to be the covering that's on the outside of a cell. Cytoplasm is the gel inside the cell that surrounds all the organelles.
All cells come from what cells?
We'll get there.
Have we got to question 1?
We should have done question 1, but we haven't gotten any.
No, on question 2. Question 1.
No, not yet. Eukaryote means a cell that has a true nucleus. Nucleoid is the place in a prokaryotic cell that contains the DNA and it's all bunched up together. Nucleus is the interior part of the cell that has the hereditary information or DNA. Then organelles are going to be different structures inside the cell. Prokaryote is a cell that does not have the true nucleus. And a ribosome is where amino acids are joined to make proteins. So those are just some of the words. Hopefully when we get to them, you'll kind of remember that so that they're not so unfamiliar. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the cell theory. The cell theory states that all living organisms are composed of one or more cells. Now this is that question 2. So all living organisms are composed of one or more cells. The cell is the basic unit of life in living things, and that all cells come from existing cells. And we're going to watch a little video about how the cell
Why
is
is a cell
discovered.
called a cell? To answer that question, you need to see this, and this. A cell was first called a cell in 1665 by scientist and inventor Robert Hooke. who was looking at a piece of cork under a microscope. The cork looked like this, and his microscope looked like this. Both of these images were drawn by Hooke. As he looked through the microscope, he called what he saw cells, because they reminded him of the small, simple rooms that monks lived in. When he discovered cells, Hooke likely had no idea how important a discovery he was making. For we now know the cell to be the basic unit of life in all living things, though most cells, like nerve cells, sperm cells, and red blood cells, are too small to be seen with just your eye. There might be a very large type of cell in your refrigerator, an egg.
Okay, so now if you'll continue down to the next question. So each cell has the following. They're going to have a cell membrane, hereditary material, organelles, and cytoplasm. The cell membrane can also be called the plasma membrane, and it covers the outside of a cell and acts as a fence or barrier between the cell and its environment to protect the cell. Hereditary material is what allows cells to make other cells. This is going to be the DNA, also called deoxyribonucleic acid. Not only does it contain information needed to make new cells, but it also controls all the activities of the cell. Organelles are structures inside cells that help cells live and grow and reproduce. Different types of cells have different types of organelles. Now, each cell could have many different organelles in it. The cytoplasm is the organelles of the cell are surrounded by a gel. Now, this gel is the cytoplasm. Now, excluding the nucleoid region or nucleus, all of the material of the cell within the cell membrane consists of a fluid portion called cytosol, and the organelles or other particles suspended in it and is the cytoplasm. So cytosol is the fluid portion, and then everything together is the cytoplasm. The prokaryotic cell, if you'll use this. Here's a pencil. You can label that. So there's only one type of living organism that possesses a prokaryotic cell, and that is the bacteria. Bacteria are found in soil, water, and in the air. No, we've got a student on. They are also found on plants, dead and decaying matter, and inside humans and other animals. Have you ever heard of a probiotic?
Mm-hmm.
So the probiotic, it contains millions of bacteria in a little bitty pill, and you take the pill, and what it does is it replenishes the good bacteria that live in your body.
What's the difference between a probiotic and an antibiotic?
So the antibiotic, when you get sick, it's usually, if it's from bacteria, if you're sick because of bacteria, you'll take an antibiotic, and that will hopefully kill the bad bacteria that's causing you to be sick. And then you can take a probiotic to help replace the good bacteria that you had to kill in order to get rid of the bad bacteria. So bacteria are the smallest cells and have a simpler structure than eukaryotic cells. The organelles in bacteria are not bound by membranes. So if we look at the figure 1.1 of the prokaryotic cell, the organelles, you can tell that the middle part, or the hereditary material, is just kind of floating there in the middle. It's not contained. You have a cell wall, which is the outermost layer of the cell. Over there. Mm-hmm. I'll wait on you to finish that.
Just in case. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Did you get the bacteria question?
I can go. Thank you, Dawn.
It's just that they're each going to be answered.
Oh.
Questions.
For the question. Bacteria?
Okay.
Oh,
and
so
then-
you're not moving on from that.
No. And now we're labeling on there. You can also label here, but you'll want to fill it in on your lesson as well. Okay, so the cell wall, once again, is that outermost layer. Actually, it looks to me like it's the second layer. The middle layer is your cell wall.
And third layer is the cell membrane.
That outermost layer is your capsule. But it doesn't look like we talk about the capsule. But your ribosomes are going to be those little round dots inside of the cell. And that is where amino acids make proteins. So the ribosome is considered an organelle. Now the nucleoid is the area where the hereditary material is stored in the prokaryotic cells. So the prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus, but the region where the DNA is bunched together is called the nucleoid. Okay, so there's a nucleoid for prokaryotic cells and a nucleus for eukaryotic cells. The pili and the flagella are special string-like appendages that prokaryotic cells may or may not have, but usually they're not going to have both. So the pili allow bacteria to attach to other cells, where the flagella will help the bacteria be motile or able to move. And that's usually towards a response, a stimulus. It's okay. Whenever you're finished.
Can you spell ribosomes for me?
Ribosomes is RIBOSOMES. Okay, so now we're going to label.
Go back real fast.
That's okay. We'll get back to it. It's flagella,
Flagella?
like flag.
Oh, FLAG?
Mm-hmm. And then ELLES
Thank you.
or A. Whatever. Okay, so number one is your cell capsule. And then two is the cell wall. So that middle layer is the cell wall. And then you have the cell membrane. And what is four? Do you know what four is?
4 is cytoplasm.
Correct. That is the cytoplasm. And then 5 was
3 is. Right. 5 is hereditary material.
the hereditary material. Correct. What about 6? The little place where amino acids make proteins. What is
I
that
remember
called?
this one because I had to ask ribosomes.
Ribosomes. And then 7,
Pill.
the pili, which helps it to attach to other cells. And then finally 8 is the flagella. Oh, it's not an E at the end, it's an A. The flagella, which helps the bacteria to be motile or movable. Okay, so
Motile?
motile,
What's that?
able to move.
It's kind of like mobile.
Yep. So bacteria, the good guys. So most people think of bacteria as bad because often when people are sick, they are given an antibiotic, which is a medicine that will kill bacteria. However, the antibiotics are often made by other types of bacteria.
Like
Did
good
you know that? Crazy, huh?
And
So-
also like with COVID, we're gonna be killing good bacteria with sanitizing every single hour. That's why my mom doesn't sanitize that much.
Yeah, that is true.
She sanitizes.
It opens you up for the more bad bacteria.
She sanitizes before school, at lunch, and after school.
So, have you heard the word E. coli?
Mhm.
This can scare people, but everyone has E. coli in their bodies. Bacteria are all around us and essential to maintain balance in our world. So if you read the back of your yogurt container, you'll see that it contains live bacteria.
What?
These bacteria are good for your digestive system because of a bacterium simple cell structure. Because of the bacteria's simple cell structure, they can be found living in the harshest conditions, and scientists can engineer bacteria strands that can do amazing feats, such as eat oil and toxic pollution and convert it to harmless substances.
Have you answered number 6 yet?
No.
Sweet.
Okay, so now we're going to talk. Hold on one moment, please.
Answer before.
Okay, so the eukaryotic cells, if bacteria are the only living cells that have prokaryotic cells, then every other form of life, which are plants and animals, is made up of eukaryotic cells. That's okay. So this is going to be that next.
Oh, this one is.
So plants and animals, every other life form is made of eukaryotic cells. So you have prokaryotic cells are bacteria alone. And then eukaryotic cells is everything else that's alive.
So
Now,
which one has a nucleus?
Remember, let's get to that. Remember, we talked earlier that the eukaryotic cell means true nucleus.
Okay.
So
So prokaryotic
all
does not.
eukaryotic cells contain a nucleus. And the nucleus is where the DNA or the hereditary material is located. It's also the control center for the rest of the cell because that DNA has all the information on how to make the cell's proteins. Almost all the chemical reactions necessary to the cell's life involves some type of protein. Now, eukaryotic cells may possess several types of organelles to help with the special function of each cell. We're going to learn more about some of these specialized organelles in lesson 2. Okay, so let's go through. Okay, so number 1 is going to be the cell wall. And then the material inside the cell is the cytoplasm. Remember that the fluid portion is cytosol, and then the fluid with all organelles together is cytoplasm. Number 3 is a ribosome. Now, isn't this familiar with the prokaryotic cell, correct? Mm-hmm. So we can see that both eukaryotic cell and prokaryotic cell, they contain all 3 of these organelles, correct?
So say it again.
Or all 3 of these organ characteristics, cell characteristics, not organ. Okay, and then number 4, that outermost layer is your cell membrane. And 5 is the nucleus. So the eukaryotic cell contains the nucleus, it has a cell membrane, ribosomes, cytoplasm, and the cell wall. To compare the two, the prokaryotic cell has DNA that's stored in a nucleoid, where the eukaryotic cell, it's in the nucleus. Both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells contain a cell membrane. They both have, the prokaryotic cell does not have an organelle with membranes, whereas the eukaryotic cells have organelles with membranes. Both will have a cytoplasm. The prokaryotic cells have a cell wall, where the eukaryotic cells, only the animals have no cell wall, the plants do. The prokaryotic cell will have a capsule, where a eukaryotic cell will not have a capsule.
Can you go back and
We're about to right now.
Oh.
Okay, in here, it's your next page as well. Okay, so we're going to use a Venn diagram to compare. So we can say that prokaryotic cells, all of them have a cell wall. So that is unique to the prokaryotic cell, that they all have a cell wall. They are going to contain the flagella. A eukaryotic cell will not have any flagella. The prokaryotic cell has a capsule. Our eukaryotic cell has a nucleus that is different than the prokaryotic cell, because the prokaryotic cell has the nucleoid. Our eukaryotic cells contain organelles that have membranes.
Is that one thing on the bottom?
Yeah, yes, just one.
What is
Organelles have membranes. Over. The things that they have in common, they're both going to have a cell membrane, and they both have cytoplasm.
That's it for that?
Yes.
Then isn't there more? Just not, we're not going to go over.
Probably, yeah. Those are your basics. Okay, so now we're moving on to lesson 2, the basic plant and animal cell. That's what we'll be covering. So an organelle. Oh, Okay, once you get through with that, go on to lesson 2. But I'll wait for you.
Yep. And what's 10? Any clues?
Yes.
I mean, 80.
Okay, so lesson 2, the organelle means little organ. Every organelle has a special job or function. These include the ER and Golgi apparatus is where process and transport occur. The ribosome assembles proteins. Vacuoles is for storage. Cytoskeleton is your support and structure. The mitochondria and chloroplasts are where energy is created. And the lysosomes are your cleanup crew.
So did we go over the bacteria?
We are getting
Oh,
there.
I'm just reading.
No, not yet. Okay, so the ER is the endoplasmic reticulum. The ER is a network of membranes that form roads to travel on, and also the trucks driving on the road for delivery to help transport material through the cell. So, if you were to lay out the ER of one tiny cell, it would cover several meters if you were to stretch it all the way out. Can we focus on our lesson, please? Some of the ER has ribosomes attached, and this type is called the rough ER. So if you looked at it under an electronic microscope, it would look bumpy, which is why it's called rough. And the portion that does not covered in ribosomes is called the smooth ER. Now the Golgi apparatus, which is the green thing, this cell part was named after the Italian biologist Camillo Golgi, who first discovered it in 1898. So its main job is to temporarily store, package, and transport material made by other parts of the cell. So it's going to be like your UPS or FedEx shipping center. Now, other parts of the cells send macromolecules, such as proteins and lipids, to the Golgi apparatus. This then packages and processed. The packages are processed, and eventually the packages will get transported out of the Golgi apparatus to the final destination. Now, the ribosomes are where amino acids are joined to make proteins. Ribosomes are about 25 nanometers in diameter. One bacterial cell might have about 15,000 ribosomes. Some of the proteins the ribosomes make include enzymes and hormones. These special proteins are exported from the cell and transported to be used by different organs in the body. Other proteins the ribosomes make are used in the process the cell needs to make energy. Now, vacuoles, those are your storage. Now, remember, a cell is very organized and functional. Part of being organized is having a place to store things. So just like clothes go in a dresser when not being used, shoes might go in a shoe rack, and garbage goes in the trash can. Vacuoles provide temporary storage for food, enzymes, water, and waste, and other materials for the cell. In plant cells, there is often one big vacuole that stores water and dissolved salt. In a typical animal cell, there are several smaller vacuoles that store proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and waste.
So
We're getting to the next one. The cytoskeleton. This organelle is responsible for providing support and structure to the cell. The cytoskeleton means cell skeleton. So within this skeleton are other structures called microtubules and microfilaments made out of proteins. So these microstructures provide a firm but flexible skeleton for the cell. Microtubules make up the cilia and flagella that some cells possess to help them move. So a cytoskeleton helps other things move in the cell by providing a place for materials to attach to and roll on through, sort of like a railroad track. So you have microtubules and you have microfilaments that are part of the cytoskeleton. Now your lysosomes are your cleanup crew. They like to be by themselves until they're needed. They have double membranes that separate them from other organelles in the cell. So lysosomes contain an enzyme that if it was released, it would destroy the cell. And so by a very careful and well-controlled process, lysosomes can attach themselves to other materials, such as food particles, invasive bacteria, viruses, or even damaged organelles. It'll then release the enzyme and essentially it'll eat or digest the bad stuff. Mitochondria is going to be the powerhouse of the cell. This is where energy is created. So it's going to take sugar molecules and create little packets of energy from them for the cell to use. Now, the chloroplast is the organelle where photosynthesis occurs. And inside the, this will take the sugar used by the mitochondria to release energy into useful forms of the cell. So the chloroplasts have double membranes. And the thylakoids, so see these little green discs that are everywhere, the granum, those are also your thylakoids. They're going to be grouped together in a granum and surrounded by stroma in an aqueous fluid. Okay, so this table shows us, we've got the type of cell, a diagram of the cell, and then the description of the different cells. You have red blood cells, nerve cells, and muscle cells. So your red blood cells are good for carrying oxygen from the lung surface to the rest of the body. Your nerve cells will form connections with other nerve cells, and they're going to carry impulses along this network that will give information to different parts of the body. Your muscle cells, they contract to provide movement. They're also going to be very rich in mitochondria, and that's going to allow them to break down glucose with oxygen, which produces energy. So all organelles discussed above can be found in a typical plant cell.
Do I have to pick this one?
No. Now, plant cells, this is one of your questions. So you might want to go back. Now, your plant cells have a cell wall made of cellulose. So this is different from the animal cell because animal cells do not have a cell wall. So the cell wall surrounds the plasma membrane or the cell membrane, right? Because they are both called. No, I'm not talking about a question. I'm just talking. So remember earlier we said that the cell wall or the cell membrane can also be called the plasma membrane. And that covers the whole cell. Now, cellulose in a plant cell wall is fiber.
So this was planned, correct?
Yes, this is a plant cell. This cell wall is what gives humans most of our fiber in our diets. Now, fungus and almost all bacteria also have that cell wall. Now, plants have chloroplasts. This is another question. Plants have chloroplast in many of their cells and usually one large vacuole for water storage.
Wait, oh, is this down here? Did we already get 5 and 6?
I think this is 5 and 6.
Oh, so
Oh, no, 5 is mitochondria.
oh,
Here, that was back
sorry.
here.
I was reading it. I'm like, I was. How do you spell it? CO.
MITO.
Okay.
CHONDRIA.
Thank you.
Organelles can be found within the cytoplasm.
Thank you. I was trying to. I was thinking. I'm like,
Okay, so now basically, go back up. Oh, okay. Go down to okay, here you go. So the things that are unique to plants, identify which of the following statements are true about plant and animal cells. Plant cells have a cell wall. Plants have chloroplasts. One large vacuole.
this one?
Uh-huh. None of those others are true. So, all right, go down to the next one.
Thank you.
Okay, so now for the animal cell does not have a cell wall. What is this question asking?
Animal cells do not have cells.
And that is true, which is why we don't get much fiber when we eat meat. We need to eat plant for fiber. Now, animal cells also do not have chloroplasts. This is a question as well.
Where?
Sure. Oh, maybe up for that other one. Never mind. Meaning we cannot create our own energy, and therefore we are heterotrophs or consumers. So because we have no chloroplasts and cannot create our own energy, we are heterotrophs. We must consume other things to create our energy.
Say that the one you said that must be up mine.
Oh, that animal cells do not have chloroplasts.
Mitochondria.
Now, all living creatures have cells. This is one of the characteristics of life. All cells have their own organelles to help them work properly. Okay, so let's label our cell. If you scroll down.
Wait, did we just do that one?
I don't think so. Okay, so the middle large round organelle labeled A is the nucleus. And then B is the mitochondria. This is your powerhouse of the cell. C is going to be the cytoplasm. So it's just pointing to the interior of the cell in general. C is cytoplasm. D is the rough ER because as you can see, the ribosomes are attached, making it look bumpy or rough. E is your cell membrane. It is covering the outside of the cell, surrounds the entire cell is the cell membrane. F is a vacuole. So this is where your storage organelle is. And as you can see, there's several of them inside the cell. G is going to be your smooth ER because there are not any ribosomes attached to it. H is your Golgi apparatus. Whoops. Sorry. And there are certainly other pieces of organelles inside the cell. As you can see, these long white things are your cytoskeleton. And then just the little dots by themselves are going to be your ribosomes. Now, how organisms are organized. Oh, okay, let's get this all finished up. This is going to be lesson 3. So get all your questions finished up, and then we'll move on to lesson 3.
We never did this one.
Oh, we did. Okay. Yeah, this is just one that's like overall. So I'll go back.
Oh. All of them.
Yeah, I was just okay. So here you go. On this page. So the things that make and assemble proteins are your ribosomes. Package and process material. Process, the Golgi apparatus, packages and processes. The organelle composed of a network for transport. Transport. Will you take away so I can read this?
Yeah.
Oh, taking this out. Powerhouse is mitochondria. Go to the next one. Back to that one. Create energy from the sun. That's your chloroplast. Cleanup crew is the lysosome. Storage is your vacuole. That's cytoskeleton. So that one is going to be the ER.
This one is
Uh-huh.
the endoplasmic reticulum.
Correct. Okay. Is that all of them?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just not in it today.
You're fine. Okay. So now we're gonna go. We're gonna skip forward. I think it was slide 21. We're almost finished. We just got lesson 3 to do.
0.
Yeah, it's fine.
Did he have like 2 screens for them to show?
Mhm. Okay, so now lesson 3, we're going to talk about how organisms are organized. Let's look at this guy. Okay, so first you start with the atom. That is going to be, say, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, one atom. And then those atoms are going to combine together to form a molecule. So carbon dioxide, water, H2O, sugar, your glucose. So your atoms form a molecule. And then your molecules will combine in a perfect way to form an organelle. Now that organelle is going to be grouped together with other organelles surrounded by a cell membrane to create a cell. The cells will then group together to form a tissue. Those tissues will work together to form an organ. Those organs then work together to form an organ system. And then you can have multiple organ systems that form an organism. So some organisms, though, such as bacteria, will only have the one cell, while other types of life have more than one cell. Like humans, we have trillions of cells and over 200 different types of cells. So how do these cells organize? So we're looking at this figure. It's telling us how these cells will organize, starting with the atom and ending with the organism. Okay. I believe that's going to be it here. Okay. So just follow along with me. Now, the body has many different types of cells, like we said earlier. So similar cells will group together into a community called a tissue. Now, some types of tissue in humans, okay, these are just some really general types. These are not all of the types. You have connective tissue, which are found in blood and bone. You have epithelial tissue. It's also called the epithelium. Now, this type of tissue lines the organs and covers the body. Okay, so our skin.
These are on question 3. The ones you're seeing right now.
So was the first one question 2?
No, the found in blood and bones is 3. Tissue. I don't think we were doing this. I'm going to last one.
Oh, I think this is going to be each one as well. So that very first one, similar cells will group together in a community called tissue. Group of tissues that perform a special function. A group of organs, a basic building block. So you already know what the basic building block of your life is, right? No, that's not. Oh. Okay, so now a group of cells that have a similar structure and function. So here it is, right here.
Oh.
And that's going to be the tissue. So we're going to get to them. It's just going to be, you're going to have to actually look for it a little bit, okay? So number 3 is probably this list, right?
Yes. Found in blood and bones is connected, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then your epithelial is going to line the organs and cover the outside of the body. So your epithelium. Muscle tissue makes up your muscles, and that's what moves us. And nerve tissue transmits impulses and forms nerves. I have a video here to watch about the organization of tissue, but I think we're going to skip it. So if you will go back to the slideshow that I post, I don't know if I've posted it already yet or not, but if you'll go back to it and watch it. We don't have time since we were 30 minutes late today. But that'll be on your own time. Go ahead and do that.
I'm just logging.
Okay. All right, go back to your questions. So now go back to that question 2 and look for this one. So organs. In the same way that similar cells will join together to make tissues, the tissues will join together to make organs. So an organ is simply a group of tissues that performs a special function. So then different types of tissues might make up an organ. Now, if you look at the heart muscle or the heart organ, it has its own special cell, an own special tissue, the cardiac muscle. And no other cell in the body contains cardiac muscle like the heart.
System is a group of organs.
Yeah, now your organ system is a group of organs that are going to work together to achieve a major function. So your heart is an organ that is part of the vascular organ system, and it's responsible for providing your blood to the entire body. The digestive system is just one organ system found in humans and other animals. For instance, you have the mouth, that is an organ. You have your esophagus, which is another organ. The stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. These are all individual organs that, when put together, form the organ system for digestion.
An organism is a living thing that's composed of systems.
Yes. Now, whenever you, like you just said, whenever you take these organ systems, such as your cardiovascular system, your nervous system, your digestive system, muscular system, you put them all together and you create an organism. Now, enzymes and cell processes. Some of the special cell processes are going to include converting energy, digesting food, excreting waste, reproducing, and taking in oxygen. So in each of these processes, chemical reactions are occurring. And we learned some of this in Unit 1, that most chemical reactions require an enzyme to make them go. So let's talk a little bit about enzymes.
So this is what all the special
Mhm.
processes
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about these enzymes. So they are going to reduce the amount of activation energy needed for that chemical reaction to happen. Now, let's just say in digestion, you eat a piece of food, and the thing that causes the body to break that food down without using just this tremendous amount of energy is going to be an enzyme. These chemical reactions, the molecules that enzymes stick to, are going to be called the substrate.
So it's sticking molecule.
The place on the enzyme where the enzyme is going to attach itself to the substrate is called the active site. Now, this active site and the substrate are going to fit perfectly together. It's going to be just like a lock and key. So the enzyme fits perfectly, and in essence, it's going to unlock the door for that chemical reaction to happen in the cell.
Kind of like whenever two elements bond together to make a substance. What substance, right?
Yep, that is correct. So if you see in this figure, you have your substrate, it attaches to the enzyme. The enzyme unlocks the power, right? It unlocks, it allows that chemical reaction to take place. And when that substrate is broken off, you have products because a chemical reaction has occurred.
So number 8 is what?
So why was it like a lock and key? Because the active site on the enzyme and the substrate fit perfectly together, and when they do, they unlock the chemical reaction. It's that first one. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the stem cell research. And this is going to be, like in your own words, I want you to tell me, what is stem cell research? Okay, so have you heard about stem cells in the news? Do you know what they are?
Can you refresh me?
Sure. So stem cells are a special type of cell that has the ability to develop into different types of cells in the body. Okay, so when a stem cell divides, each new cell has the potential either to remain a stem cell or to become another type of cell with a more specialized function, such as a muscle cell, a red blood cell, or a brain cell. Okay, so while we talked about cells having a special function, stem cells are unspecialized but capable of becoming specialized. All right, so that's going to occur by a natural condition or maybe a scientific process, right? So to develop tissue or organs with a special function, scientists are interested in these stem cells to help in diseases that relate to heart and diabetes. Okay, because stem cells, you make them into whatever you want them to be, right? So in order to get stem cells, however, they're going to come from an embryo or from what are called adult stem cells. Now, a human embryo is developed when an egg is fertilized by a sperm and implanted into a woman's uterus. These stem cells in the embryo go on to develop into all the organ systems the humans possess. Embryos are used for research, embryos that are used for research usually come from embryos from in vitro fertilization procedures. In 2006, some scientists were able to make non-stem cells and reprogram them to become unspecific, just like a stem cell. So stem cells from adults are mainly involved in the repair and replacement of damaged tissues in organs, such as the stomach, the bone marrow. In other organs, however, such as the heart, stem cells divide only under special conditions. So there are stem cells in the adult body, your skin, your hair, your digestive system, but other organs, like it's saying the heart, the nervous system, those don't really reproduce once they're set. Now, what is the controversy? So what is a stem cell? The stem cell is a special type of cell that has the ability to develop into different specialized cells. Or you could say it is an unspecialized cell that can become specialized. Now, the controversy over stem cell research has to do with those human embryos, because human embryos can become another person, right? An embryo is the starting stage of what turns into a baby and then a person, okay? So the controversy is that these embryos are going to become people, and so it's unethical to destroy embryos just for the purpose of research. Now, people for the use of stem cells from embryos argue that if the embryo from leftover IVF procedures, they're going to be thrown out anyway. So why not use them to further science? Because they would never have become a person in the first place. Now, on the other hand, those who oppose using embryonic stem cells say they do not know if scientists are only using the leftover embryos, that they're not creating new ones just to be tested on. So also, even if there are leftover ones, is it still morally wrong to kill the life in the name of research? So that's what I want you to answer on this last question. I want you to tell me what you think a stem cell is, which we've outlined here. Why is there a controversy with stem cell research? And where do you stand? Do you think that it's unethical to use human embryos for research, or do you think that it's fine as long as it's leftover IVF, or is it okay to create brand new life? I want your opinion. So if you'll go ahead and write that out.
Yeah, you didn't put
What?
the.
What do you mean? Oh, okay. Yeah, go back to the question. So let's answer this. So first, tell me, what is a stem cell?
In our own words. Oh, just word for word.
It can be word for word, but it can be changed up to your own words. So write down, what is a stem cell? It's right here.
No, I'm stumbling, right? Copy paste.
If you type it, it's your own, right?
That's right.
So what is a stem cell? A stem cell is a special type of cell.
A stem cell.
Stem cell is a special type of cell that can become any type of cell in the body.
A stem cell is what?
A special type of cell that can be any type of cell.
A special type of cell that can be any type of cell.
Mm-hmm.
That it?
Now, why is stem cell research controversial? So you say stem cell research is controversial because scientists use human embryos.
Stem cell research is expert controversial.
CONTROVER. Sure. I think IAL. SIAL. Okay. Because it uses human embryos. Okay, now this
Human
part's
what?
all you.
Oh.
Human embryos. Did I say stem cells? Human embryos.
No, you said embryos.
Oh.
EM what? B.
EMBRYOS. And now, if you will tell me your opinion, where do you stand on the issue? Should there be stem cell research? If there should there be any regulations? If there are going to be regulations, what are those regulations that we should place? So you tell me what you think. Where do you stand? Is it okay? Is it not okay?
Can you explain to me?
When talking about stem cell research, scientists use human embryos. Do you think that's okay?
So like a baby or before it is before it comes out?
Definitely before it comes out.
Okay.
So like even before it's put into a mother's womb. So have you heard of IVF?
Of what?
IVF. So women that can't have children, what the doctor does is they'll remove some of their eggs and they'll put them in a dish with sperm, and then they'll become fertilized.
So
And that becomes an embryo. So when the sperm and the egg meet, it becomes an embryo, right? So in this dish are these eggs and sperm waiting to be implanted into a woman's womb in order to become a child.
Is that where a doctor takes the egg and the sperm and then put it in another person?
It can be put into another person. It could be put into the person that they took the egg from.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like the sperm can't, or the egg can't do it by itself in there?
For whatever reason, yeah, the woman can't naturally create the embryo, but they'll create it in this petri dish,
And put it back in her or something?
put it back in her, and a lot of times they won't put all of them back. There'll be some left over. And in that dish, that's where they'll take these embryos, or what they've said is that they only use these embryos, the leftovers, that would never make it to human form. Or sorry, not human form, that would never make it to a full-term pregnancy, that type of thing. So they take these embryos and they use them for stem cell research. Do you think that's okay?
To do taking it out and put it back in?
No, to take the ones that are left over in the petri dish to do research on those embryos.
I mean, yeah, because like if the doctor takes more than one egg out, if they have like, if that one egg that got the sperm, if it doesn't have multiple, it doesn't have like twins or something. I mean, what are they gonna use this for? Like, are they gonna is the mom gonna want more from another mom, or like from another. Like I mean, it's mom's choice.
Okay, so write that down. So it's you agree, you believe that it's fine to use leftover IVF embryos for stem cell research, right?
What would I say?
I think it's fine to use leftover embryos for stem cell research.
I think it's fine if the
To use leftover as long as the mother consents.
mother and father.
And father, yeah, mother and father say it's okay.
Baseball consent, C-O-N what?
SENT
C. Oh, T.
TS. Consent.
And that's it. Submit it.
Sure.
And we go back to class.
Let's see. Um, so if you'll go on the review. The review.
Started. We're gonna do that now.
Mhm.
Today's your short face.
Let's make it quick.
How long is it? Do you know?
17 questions. Okay, so what is the gel that is the gel in the cell that surrounds all organelles?
The gel is the cytoplasm.
That is correct. Now match the organelle to its function. So we're just going to say, okay, so what makes or assembles proteins? Do you remember? Makes,
Mitochondria.
no,
Chloroplast.
ribosome.
Oh,
The storage,
that's a vacuum.
that is the vacuole. The powerhouse,
But no.
the powerhouse to
Oh, the
make
apparatus.
powerhouse to make energy.
Oh, mitochondria.
That is correct. What's the support and structure?
Cytoskeleton.
Mm-hmm. And that cleanup crew. Who was the cleanup crew?
Lysozyme.
That is correct. Lysosome. What processes and transports?
Chloroplast.
Mm-mm.
Oh, Golgi apparatus.
That is correct. And then who creates energy from sun? From the sun.
That is chloroplast.
That one's your chloroplast. All right, now let's talk about the cell theory. The cell theory states that all living what are composed of one or more cells. All living blank are composed of one or more cells. It's the cell theory. Keep going. It's gonna have a 1, 2, 3 part. Cell theory states.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't know.
So the cell theory states that all living what are composed of one or more cells.
Oh no. Organisms.
Mm-hmm. The blank is the basic unit of life. What was that? The cell. And all cells come from existing cells. Now, organelles listed here can be found in an animal cell except.
No. Vacuole.
Both animal and plants have a vacuole.
Chloroplast.
Chloroplast. That's correct. Because plants
Oh, yeah, 'cause that's the
can make photosynthesis or can use photosynthesis to create energy, but animals cannot. Now, the blank contains the DNA and is the control center of the cell. What is the control center of the cell? Nucleus, correct. Now, prokaryotics do not have what? The prokaryotic cells do not have which organelle? That the eukaryotic cells do.
Ribosome?
They have ribosomes.
Organelle.
No. No.
Nucleus?
Nucleus. Remember,
Oh, yeah.
eukaryote means true nucleus. Prokaryote means no nucleus. Okay, so similar cells that perform a similar function are going to group together to form what? So a bunch of
Organelle.
cells, no,
Oh.
a, bu-
Molecule?
a bunch of cells
Oh, tissue.
come together to create a tissue. Now match the following types of tissues with the correct definition. Which cells are, which tissues are found in blood and bone?
That is the connective.
Connective. Now the type of tissue that lines the organs and covers the body.
The one that's associated with
Epithelial tissue, correct. This makes up your muscles, muscle tissue.
Nerve tissue.
And if it transports and forms nerves, it's the nerve tissue. Now list all the functions of an organelle. What do the organelles do? Okay, so they're going to help the cell live, help the cell grow and develop, help the cell reproduce. Now, the substances in chemical reactions that stick to an enzyme are called what?
This one?
The substances that in a chemical reaction.
That's the substrate.
That's correct, substrate. These are the only type of living organism that possess a prokaryotic cell. So the only type of life that is a prokaryotic cell. Do you remember that one? So it's going to be blank are the only type of cell or type of living organism that possess the prokaryotic cell.
That's the bacteria.
Bacteria, correct. Now, true or false? Consuming nitrogen is not a cell process.
True.
True or false?
True. What is it?
Skip one. It's that one.
It's true, right?
That is true. Now, a group of tissues that perform a special function is organ, correct? This means little organ.
Flagella?
Nope.
No organelle.
Organelle, correct. This reduces the amount of activation energy needed for the chemical reaction. Reduces the amount of activation energy needed for the chemical reaction. Do you remember what that was?
Can you repeat it again?
reduces the amount of activation energy needed for the
Active
chemical reaction. No, the active
Enzyme.
site is on this thing. Yes, the enzyme. Now, finally, the place on an enzyme where the substrate attaches itself. We just talked about this. Uh-huh. Should be all of them.
We still got
Oh, that's not that one.
There
you have- Okay, and that concludes our class today. Thanks for hanging out with us for so long, Sarah. I know we went almost 45 minutes over. I'll see you on Wednesday.
The true nucleus is which one?